Welcome, and thank you for joining us this afternoon, joining this debate among candidates for Utah State Board of Education in District 5. District 5 includes parts of West Valley, Salt Lake, South Salt Lake, and Murray. Our candidates today are William Fisher, Sarah Reel, and Laurel Fetzer. I'm Elizabeth Garvey, Vice President of Public Policy for United Way of Salt Lake, and I will be today's moderator. Before we start, I would like to recognize and thank our sponsors and members of the Utah Education Debate Coalition, the Hinckley Institute of Politics, KSL and Deseret News, United Way of Salt Lake, Utah PTA, Sutherland Institute, and the Utah Association of Public Charter Schools. This debate is meant to provide a platform so that voters understand the views of the candidates on important educational issues and can make informed voting decisions in the upcoming general election. As a reminder, Election Day is on November 8th, and ballots in most of the counties will be going out next week in the mail. That's going to be on October 18th, so you should be looking in your mailboxes soon so that you can cast your votes. The rules of the debate are simple. Each candidate will be given a 90-second opening statement. For the first half hour, I will be posing questions to the candidates. Each candidate will be given 60 seconds to answer. Should a rebuttal be necessary, they will be given an additional 30 seconds. The same questions will be posed to each of the candidates, and we will alternate between the three candidates. At the end of the first half hour, we will be turning to audience questions, so please put your questions in the chat. Those will be sent to me, and then I can ask those of the candidates. Should we not have enough questions from you, but I'm counting on all of you out there listening, we will, I do have some additional questions that I will pose. And then we will conclude the debate with the 90-second closing statements from each of the candidates. Prior to the debate, I met with the candidates, reviewed the rules, and determined who would start. And through that, Laurel Fetzer will kick us off. Then we will have Sarah Reel and William Fisher will close us out at the opening statements. So let's begin with our 90-second opening statements. Laurel?
Thank you. Hi, I'm Laurel Fetzer. I am running for State School Board District 5. I come as a parent with a lot of parental experience to this office. I have 4 children who've attended the Murray schools, and my youngest is a senior. So we've had a lot of experience in all of my kids' elementary classrooms and with running elementary PTA and Murray High School PTA, and been on community councils and the Renaissance or Spartan Strong program. And then I've also been the district volunteer for the science fair program the last 4 years. And so I am invested in my kids' success. I'm invested in their in being a parent voice, and I have priorities to help decrease the teacher workload that we have currently, and to focus on academic basics to help each child succeed, and also to improve our transparency between parents and schools and teachers. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Sarah.
Thank you, and thank you for hosting this debate. I think it's so important to give opportunities for voters to hear from candidates, so thank you. My name's Sarah Reel, and I want you to know that public service isn't just a title for me, it's a value. My mom is a teacher, my sister is a teacher, and I've spent almost 20 years working in higher education. The last 12 years I've spent at Salt Lake Community College as an administrator and a teacher. As a director at Salt Lake Community College, I've built effective ways of communicating to students, their parents, alumni, legislators, and the community to help them navigate and contribute to higher education and achieve their academic goals. I like to think of Salt Lake Community College as a lot like District 5. We have 50,000 students 6,000 employees, and we're connected in every sector across the county. And as a leader at the college, I've helped launch new initiatives, communicate changes, and work with partners in everything from athletics to technical education to create positive change for our students and those we support. We have the most diverse student population in the state, and I have put equity, inclusivity, and accessibility at the forefront of every decision I make. I also sit on the Salt Lake Library Board, the Ballpark Community Council, and the Salt Lake County Open Spaces Planning Commission. And when I'm not supporting students, I've dedicated my life to a fierce community advocate. Thank you.
Great, thank you. William.
Yes, well, thank you again for the Debate Commission for hosting this debate. I'm William Fisher, and I'm, of course, running for the Utah State Board of Education, District 5. And I'm running because I have 11 years of high school teaching experience from Southern Nevada. And I also follow local, state, and national educational issues and policies very closely. And I think as a high school teacher, educator, I bring a unique perspective to one of the three most important people in a student's educational life: their parents, their teachers, and the other associated administrators. I have an extensive volunteer background that I might get into later that supports my experience as an educator. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, William. Let's start with the first question, and Sarah will have you begin this answering first. So Sarah, please, and this is for everyone though, please tell me your assessment of public education in Utah. Are we succeeding? Where do we need improvement? And how would you help bring about those improvements if elected?
That's a great question. Thank you. I think there's a lot of good that we are doing in public education in Utah. We have a strong public school support. In a lot of states, we're seeing public schools having less attendance and private schools increasing in attendance, which to me really creates an equity divide, because those that can afford private schools attend private schools, and then we're not supporting the public schools. So I'm really proud to be from Utah, where we cherish and put a lot of emphasis in our public school system. We also have outstanding educators and administrators who are dedicated to our students. I admire all of our school staff and all that they do for our public education system. Some things I think we do need to work on is we need to change and adapt the way that we look at education. Our population has changed, technology has changed, and we need to adjust to be able to better support our students. The change in population especially, there are different needs and different programs and resources that we need to provide those students. Obviously, the latest report card came out yesterday. Oh, time up, sorry. That's
Time up. Thank you. William?
Yes, I think we've got basically a good system, but the things we need to improve on, or we need to substantially or greatly increase the funding for public education, first off, being the last state in the union for per person capital spending on for pupils. Secondly, we need to significantly increase teacher pay so we don't lose our teachers, and have we need to value public educators and student staff more. And we need, one thing we could definitely need to increase now is state funding for mental health resources for students. Through the pandemic, that's become a problem. It's only becoming worse. So those are some of the main elements I think we need to improve on.
Thank you. Laurel?
Yes. Well, if you look at the overall state statistics of Utah schools, our literacy or English language report says we are at about 44% proficient. Our math is 41 and our science is 44. So I feel like we're reaching 4 out of 10 of our kids per, per group. And it looks like we need to improve that. We do have schools in our state who do reach that number. And I feel like we need to find programs that are similar to those that are making it so kids are creating those proficiencies. There are model programs that will help kids to improve their literacy rates. And I feel like improving literacy in reading is a big springboard for academic excellence all around, because they can access all the information when they learn how to read, and same with math and science. So I feel like we can look into better programs to, okay, sorry. Thank you.
No, you're good. Thank you for that answer. William, we're going to start with you on this one. Utah allows students to opt out of state mandated assessment tests. This gives parents greater control over the tests their children take. Critics, however, say that it hampers accountability, making it harder to know how well schools are performing. How should the State Board of Education evaluate which schools are succeeding and which need to do better?
Well, I think that the parents and the students should be able to opt out if there's a good reason. If they've got a learning disability, or they have trouble answering questions, maybe they need to go to a personalized individual teacher assessment. But I think the assessments should be there so that the state can have an accurate record of idea of which schools are succeeding and which aren't, and to make the proper adjustments.
Thank you. Laurel.
Well, one of my thoughts is we do have a lot of assessments that are currently being administered on our students, and that does give us good data, but there's some data that I don't know if it's a really valuable measure. So I just would like to come back with a question, like, what are the appropriate things that we should be measuring, and how do we do that better without just having our kids do more and more assessments? So I would need to look into that further, but I do support parents being able to opt in or out of whatever assessments that they that their kids are given, and figure out which school assessments give us the most accurate data for success. So.
Thank you. Sarah?
Yeah, testing is hard because it's so necessary to evaluate our performance, but at the same time, it is such a burden on our students and our educators and takes up a lot of learning time. I think it's really important that the local school boards are evaluating their district testing to make sure they aren't over testing their students. A lot of this testing is district and not the state, so we need to separate those separate issues. And on the state board, we can focus on what federal testing requirements are coming to us and how we approach those requirements, while also asking local districts to evaluate the amount of testing they are performing. I fully support the local boards and their role in evaluating things such as testing capacity. And I think it's really important to trust them and build a bridge and a partnership with our local boards and support them to evaluate those testing requirements.
I'd just like to add a comment here as well.
You, William, sure. I'll grant you 30 seconds.
I also agree that the state school board generally should, in a lot of these cases, make guidelines and recommendations to the local school boards and school districts on what how they should handle issues such as testing, and leave it up to the local school boards as much as possible, unless there's a real problem that develops from them not developing their own policy, hopefully in conjunction with the state school board.
Thank you. Does anyone else want a 30-second rebuttal?
I agree with that too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Laurel, we're going to start with you on this question. And it's going to be kind of similar to what one of our audience members has already asked, a little different twist, but this is a funding question. Proponents of more funding often bring up the fact that Utah's per pupil funding generally comes last or second to the last in the nation. Yet there are again talks of income tax rate decreases that would give back tax dollars to Utah families in the next legislative session. Do you support increases in public education funding? And given that public education is funded through income tax, what is your position on changes in income tax rates? Laurel, we'll start with you.
Well, that's a complex question. Thank you for, I think funding is very important for our education system. There's some complexities there, because if we decrease our income tax rate, sometimes we earn more money and then we pay the same amount that we would have paid before. And that equalizes out that money that would be coming into the fund. So I guess that kind of just depends on where the numbers lie. But we do have a really big, currently, we have a big budget being spent on education in the $6 billion range. So there's a window there of like, where is all of this money going and how can we make it so we are supporting the teachers in the classroom mostly with that money, and to make sure that the money is affecting our kids and improving their education outcome. So that's kind of where I stand on funding. Thank you.
Thanks. Sarah?
Thanks. This is really important to me because I believe that education is one of the most important institutions our government manages. And as we face a lot of systemic issues in our world, from homelessness to addiction and poverty, I believe that education can curb many of those systemic issues. So every time I hear about changes to the tax system or pulling dollars from state funding for education, I think about our special education students who will be missing out on funds that are needed, and other students that need additional support, especially our educators, of course. And we need to have that budget increasing, especially as our population increases. We need to fund more mental health resources, better technology. Some of our schools don't have air conditioning. And so for me, I disagree with these changes to the tax system and pulling any dollars away from education. I think we need way more money than we are getting currently.
Thank you. William?
Well, on the funding, of course, under the Constitution, the state income tax was set up to go just to public education. Then maybe about 10 years ago, they added on higher education, university as part of public education. That's fine. And they do have a lot of money coming in on the income tax. But so again, just last year or the year before, they added on, well, not only do the public schools and higher education get money out of this. Oh, well, first of all, they wanted to totally change and take away the income tax system from public education about 3 years ago, when they had the big fight and the referendum and all. And the state decided to pull that before it actually went to a referendum. There were a lot of parents in just a 30-day period, and thanks to
Can you wrap up, William?
okay, there also was they're also now taken out of that is for issues and
William.
help to small groups or to young people. So I think we don't need to decrease the funding.
William, I'm going to go to the next question.
Okay.
And we're going to start with Sarah on that question. So we're going to continue this funding question. And I think William was starting to really hit on part of this. There's been conversations over the years about Utah opting out of accepting federal education dollars. In fiscal year 22, but federal awards made up 9% of the total K through 12 education budget, or roughly $400 to $600 million annually. Most of those funds are targeted, and this does not include COVID dollars that have come into the state. Most of these funds are targeted at specific student groups that Utah would still need to serve. What are your thoughts on turning away these federal funds? And Sarah, we're starting with you.
Great, thank you. And thank you for this question. I teach political science at Salt Lake Community College, and I talk a lot about the federal government's powers and the state's powers. And I'm a strong supporter of states' rights and federalism, but I also am just so confused as to why many board members would refuse federal dollars. If we don't take those dollars to support different programs in our schools, those are going to go to students in other states. And so to me, it doesn't make sense. Although I love states' rights, I don't agree with not accepting those dollars. I think we need to accept them. We need to be transparent in how we manage our budget, and we need to use those dollars the best we can to support our students. I've spent a lot of time at the state legislature with President Hufflin fighting for more funding for higher education. There is a need, and those dollars are there, and we should take them.
Thank you. Laurel?
Yes, that is a really good question, and it is a lot of money at the 9% level, but it is like it does come with federal guidelines, and if we as a state or as a local education agency don't agree with the federal guidelines that come with those monies, then that would be part of our consideration in declining that federal money. The more we can keep our schools local and have the control locally, I think the better that we can help gear our academic success with our students. So that would be one reason why I would consider not accepting federal money, because then we can direct the money as we see fit here in Utah.
Thanks, William.
Well, on that federal money, it comes with certain requirements, but if you don't meet those requirements and you don't want to use it, you don't get to have that same amount of money just to spend on what you want. So I say, yeah, if it's something that we can use and we agree that that money should be spent on, then take it and spend it the way it's has the requirements for. If not, then don't spend it, and don't spend it at all. But it does make sense to totally turn it down. And I too was a high school teacher of American government and American history, and so I follow those issues quite closely.
Thank you. I'm going to pose this one last question before I go to questions from the audience. So there are a number coming in. Please continue to put those into the chat on YouTube. William, we're going to start off with you with this question. If elected, what would your top 3 priorities on the board be?
Increasing funding for education, building respect for classroom teachers, classroom workers, and school workers. And 3, probably increasing funding for student mental health resources now.
Great, thank you. Laurel.
Okay. My top 3 priorities are to decrease the teacher workload, to make it so that they can be better at their jobs, and supported in that area, to focus on academic basics, to help that be a major priority, and to improve transparency with parents and schools and their teachers.
Thank
I
you.
totally agree with Laura.
Sarah.
Yeah, my top 3 priorities are, I've asked teachers and superintendents and principals what their priorities are, and over again, they say mental health resources. We need money for flexible spending on mental health resources. I'd also really be in favor of full day kindergarten and fully funding statewide full day kindergarten. It's good for our economy. It's good for working mothers. It's good for Utah. And the last thing is obviously resources and funding for our educators. Resources meaning more time to prepare and plan, but also increasing their salaries.
Thank you. I appreciate all of your answers. So we're going to take our first question from the audience. We have one from Allison Miller. What are you going to do to help students who graduate from high school move on to higher education? And I think we start this one off with Laurel.
Well, one of the biggest things that I see when it comes to helping kids get on to higher education is making sure that they're succeeding and performing at their grade level, all through their academic career. So they need to be able to have those skills. I don't know, like, I think it's important for them to understand like how higher education is funded, and so that they can plan and prepare to pay for that if that is a priority for them. I think it's an option to do like technical school as well as other options besides just university or colleges. So I think there are definitely ways that other kids can succeed.
Thank you. Sarah.
I obviously love this question because I have spent so much time in higher education, and the P20 pipeline. So that pipeline from preschool all the way into higher education is a big strategic goal for Salt Lake Community College. And it's because if we look at the population of college going population, it's increasing in the county of Salt Lake County, but our all of our higher education institutions, we're seeing a de-enrollment. That happening? Why are students choosing not to go into higher education? And so I want to put in a really strong plan for a partnership between USHE and the State Board of Education, find ways to talk about college earlier in the P20 pipeline, programs and resources for first generation students, and students to find and access and dollars to get into higher education and get either a 2-year degree, certificate, or transfer to a 4-year program so that they can be successful in their lives. Higher education is key, and we need to strengthen that P20 pipeline.
Thank you. William.
Well, I agree that it's, not everybody needs to go to a 4-year college. And so using the community college and the vocational schools, they should get, and they can get from the federal government, from the state government, funding for that. In fact, the Salt Lake Community College has a very low and almost no tuition fee now because it's privately supported, and we need to, give more support to the community colleges and even vocational schools, so that every graduate doesn't think they have to go to college. On the college level, the big part of it is decreasing what the expense of a university, or well, it's not as bad for the public or the Utah but it is still a high there. So, we need to see ways that we can help graduates that aren't rich be able to fund their education.
Thank you.
Can I just do a little
30
seconds?
seconds?
Yeah. I was just gonna say that although I wish that Sully Community College was basically free, or that community college was free across our entire country, it's not fully free, but it is one of the most affordable tuition in the state. And if you spend your first 2 years at community college, you save up to $10,000 in your 4-year degree. So I just wanted to correct that. We have a lot of programs like SLCC Promise, and Weaver does as well, but it's not free. So
Yeah, my mistake.
Thank you.
I wish
Okay,
it was.
next question. And on this one, we're going to start with Sarah. This is from Robin Williams. Suicide is the leading cause of death for Utah youth ages 10 to 17. The state suicide rate for all ages is more than 60% above the national average. What is your view of social emotional learning programs?
Yeah, it feels like a two-part question there. For me, that statistic of a highest suicide rate, teen suicide rate in the nation it breaks my heart. And that just shows me how important it is that we fund mental health resources, but that also we focus on, it's really important to focus on education and all of our core areas, but we need to also have social and emotional learning. We need to teach students how to care about each other, how to treat each other with respect, because we need to build communities. We need to have safe spaces in our classroom where students can feel themselves to be curious, make mistakes, make friends. And that's all part of education. It's not just the academics, but it's the social part, the emotional part, it's included. And you can't find one teacher that says, all I do all day is talk about math and I don't do any social and emotional learning. It's so important.
Thank you. William.
Well, like I say, that was one of my top 3 goals, because nationally it's been shown through 60 Minutes, a segment, and national publications that depression and suicide has gone up during the pandemic. And a lot of students are having a hard time even getting back. And so there's a real critical need for mental health resources and counseling for the students that, nationwide, but especially in Utah, where we have such a high suicide rate, that's even a more reason to higher fund mental health resources.
Thanks. And Laurel.
So one thing that I think is that academics do need to be supported by those softer skills, but I think that we also need to focus on helping kids understand the behavior guidelines and enforce those calmly and consistently, that they can learn how to self-govern their behavior in the classroom and be able to interact with the academic skills that they need to acquire. I also believe that supporting families and parents are a big cushion for these suicide rates. I think the more kids have support with families and schools, have a better outcome. So, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, William, we're going to start with you on this next question from Tony. Do you believe parents have the authority and responsibility for the education of their children as stated in Utah Code? And what will you do to ensure that parents are listened to if elected?
Well, there are at least a third or to a half of the elements needed for a good education. Parents should be listened to. But I don't think on the extreme end, some of the newer parental groups like Utah Parents United pushing for a 30-day requirement that teachers post their curriculum for the next 30 days online and allow parents to come in and challenge that. I think that's totally unacceptable. But I fully support the PTA and I fully support reasonable parent requests. Thank you.
Thank you. Laurel?
Yes, I fully support. The Constitution says parents are the ultimate authority over their kids and directing their education. I fully support that, and I would be wanting that to stay as a real priority in our policies and our decisions. What was the other part of the question?
Sure. Sorry, it was, what will you do to ensure that parents are listened to?
Well, I would just make sure that all of our decisions are very publicly made, that I would support schools and teachers having good communication with parents. I do think posting all of their curriculum online could be very burdensome, but I do think parents want to know all that their kids are being taught. So I feel like that is not an unreasonable requirement to just have good open dialogue with our schools and our teachers.
Thank you. And Sarah?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that parents have that right. They have it legally. And they also, I think, oftentimes don't fully understand all of their rights. So I think a big piece of that is teaching parents their rights, knowing they can opt out of assignments or books or different items. But I really appreciate what William said. And I really appreciate our educators, and a lot of this asking for more transparency and all of these additional requirements they're asking for of teachers. It's a huge burden. And the reality is all of the curriculum is approved beforehand. All of their assignments, every reading, every video is all on Canvas for a parent to view. So I think oftentimes parents just need to know and be taught a lot of those options that they have. But I think we need to respect and trust our teachers to do the right thing. And a lot of these tests have been a huge burden and hurt a lot of our educators.
Thank you. Laurel, we will start with you with this next question. Education funding has increased for the past 10 years, and yet academic scores have trended downwards. How can we prioritize our spending better?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and our graduation rates are pretty high compared to our literacy, rates. I feel like we have a real disconnect there. Like, why aren't we getting some proficiency with our increased funding? I think that we need to look at our funding and really prioritize where that money is going. I would like to look into that so that we can make sure that we're maximizing the funding that's coming into our teachers and really trying to improve our kids' success at at a very basic classroom level. That would be one of my major priorities.
Thank you. Sarah.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about this question, and I was thinking about a lot of the assessments we've been doing on our spending. And it's hard for me because, like I said, I've spent a lot of time fighting for more funds, and I could give you a laundry list of things that we need funded. And I'm not sure you can draw a direct line between funding and graduation. I think there's just so much more to it. But because I've worked in education and I understand how important every single dollar is, I think it's really important that we have flexible funding, but that we also are really responsible and transparent with how we're spending those dollars. It's good to have these assessments that the legislature has asked us to do to relook at all of the funding and how we're using it and try and find more efficiencies in how we're spending. But it's hard for me to draw a line between we have this fund education, we need more funding in order to provide better graduation rates, but there's a lot more to it than just that I can answer in 60 seconds.
Thank you. William.
Well, I think we're doing a good job with what we have, and we're using it generally pretty wisely. since we have that, as Laurel said, we have that higher rate with the low dollars we do have. And I agree, we ought to just look where we can support our educators more, where they need to have extra help, and put our money into that, but not go overboard. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, for this next question, we will start with Sarah. We have one from Amanda here. What can we do to provide LGBTQ+ students with a safe environment in our schools? How important is mental health in Utah education?
Yeah, this is a great question. I care a lot about the way that we create inclusivity and safe spaces for our students so that they can be themselves. Going back to that high teen suicide rate, it breaks my heart. And I wonder if a lot of these adult arguments we're having about race and gender are actually really hurting our students. And so for me, and especially as someone that's part of the LGBTQ community, it's really important that those students have a voice. And it's really important to support our teachers who are supporting those students. We need to understand that our students have different needs, and we need to be able to support them in a way that keeps them here, keeps them alive. And anything that is more hurtful to our students, it breaks my heart, and I think shows that we are doing things in the wrong way. We need to be inclusive and we need to be equitable.
Thank you. William.
Well, I agree with Sarah that we need to value LGBT students the same as other students. There's a little bit of a question that they had the big brouhaha over the last legislature on whether transgender students going from female to a male should participate in female athletics. And I think there's a good argument to say on the legislators say that might be something that needs to be further investigated. But generally, I support treating the LGBTQ community the same as all students.
Thank you, Laurel.
Yes, I think we need to support all our students and make sure everyone is included. I think that that's a general rule for everyone in any group. And I think academics are kind of the great uniter for, or unifier for all students. That when we can have subject matter and skills and talents where all of our kids have strengths and interests, that brings them together for learning and for growth in our schools. So I feel like the more we have opportunities in all different areas where it comes to music and drama and math and computers, all of those different things, give everyone a place to succeed. So I do agree in supporting all of our students and making sure that everyone is supported.
Can I just have a 30 seconds there?
Yes.
Thanks. I think when we say all, it's sort of like it's not being equitable, because we can't just say we want to support all of our students. We have students with different needs, and we have students that belong to groups that may have been discriminated against in the past. So they might need more resources or more support than other students. So it's not as easy as just saying we want to support all students. We have students with important needs, and we need to make sure that we're supporting those needs of those specific students.
Can I reply? Can I have another 30 seconds?
Yes, you can, Laurel.
I just lost my train of thought. I think that some of the things that are measured when it comes to some of these equity ideas are kind of hard to measure and sometimes out of the scope of our schools. I think we need to keep our schools focused on why are we educating kids? Why are we here? Like, what skills do they need to have as they are approaching graduation and moving on in life. So I feel like, I don't know, there's some real interesting boundaries there that are kind of hard to measure. And I just would think that looking into that might be one of the solutions where we can find common ground for
Thank you.
all of our students. Thank you.
William, did you want another 30 seconds or are you good?
No, I'm good.
Thank you. Okay, I think we start this next question with William. I'm doing my best to remember our order, but I get a little tied up sometimes. Do you support or oppose private school vouchers in any form?
Yeah. Yes, I generally am against private school vouchers, taking away money from the public school system. There was the bill in the last legislature that one, they misnamed it the Hope Scholarship, but it basically was a voucher system where parents could use the public education money to fund private education. And I'm totally against that idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Laurel?
Yeah, I think that that is a really not a great way to manage the money. It ends up, changing what federal requirements are put on to the private schools. I don't know the best way for, everyone would like to have more funding and more choice in their education. And I do feel like we have the freedom to choose in Utah, but it doesn't necessarily mean that all of our public money will follow the student, which I agree that we don't want all the federal strings to affect our private or homeschool. So I'm not a fan of the voucher programs. Thank you.
Sarah?
Yeah, kind of like adding to what has already been said, beyond the fact that I think that there's not been one good piece of legislation. It's poorly crafted legislation that's been presented on vouchers. There are opportunities to have tax credits for things like STEM scholarships or other items. But for me to support any legislation that's that is related to vouchers, I need to see the benefit of the students who receive the dollars. Is it enough to cover any of their funds that they need to attend? I need to see if this will take from public education that's funds that are needed. Then I'm absolutely against that. And then I really want to look at the legislation and say, will this serve our students and provide them the opportunity outside of their assigned public school? To me, none of the voucher legislation is shown to be effective in providing access to low-income students and hasn't felt like responsible fiscal spending whatsoever.
Thanks everyone for answering that question. Laurel, we're going to start with you on this next question from the audience. Is it fair to ask teachers to act as mental health practitioners and social workers when they have so little time to address children's academic needs?
Personally, I don't think it's fair to require that of our teachers. I do think our teachers do end up being helpful with helping kids with, how do you say it? Following the rules, but I do think that the mental health guidance and that role needs to be either left in the homes or our medical professionals so that they can really assess the child where they are and let teachers be a teacher in their age group or their academic subjects that they have been trained on.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, this is a hard question because we don't want to add that extra responsibility to our teachers. What we want to do is allow them to focus on the things that they need to accomplish that day in their classroom. But we are so far behind on the amount of mental health professional support that we need in our schools. And as a state, honestly, we're having a hard time finding mental health providers, and we're certainly not paying them enough to ask them to apply for mental health positions in our state education. And so we would hope that we wouldn't have to have our teachers taking on that burden. But this is the reality. Unless we start funding more positions for mental health, and until we start making those more competitive salaries to get more people to want to work in education, we're going to have a hard time trying to support the mental health needs of our students when we do not have the resources.
Thank you, William.
Well, I don't think that adding that burden of being the counselor, the teachers already have enough work to do, as was stated. But it is an area that needs to be handled. So we may need to hire more psychologists or counselors, student counselors in the schools would be good. As a last resort, but I hate to even say add it on, but there might be some extra training for teachers where they could spot and maybe help as a resource in this area.
Thank you. Our next question, we're going to start with Sarah or William. Now I'm forgetting. Sarah, we're starting with you.
Great.
Sarah, what, and everyone, what are your views on book banning?
Yeah, this is a great question. I have a lot of thoughts on this. As a member of the Salt Lake Library Board, I care deeply about the access to book and learning tools, but I think it's important to break this into two parts. One are required reading that's in curriculum. That is approved by committees that include parents and teachers and administrators. And all of those required reading have the option for parents to choose new reading material if they don't approve of the reading material. But it goes through a big process to even get to that point. The second part are our library books. And I don't know if you guys know any librarians, but I know a lot of them, and they are incredible. And to me, I think it's so important that we trust our librarians to know what's best for our students. And I know that all of those librarians out there, if they saw a student taking material that was beyond their age, that they would be stopping that student and telling that parent. So we need to trust librarians, and we need books. We need books to gain empathy and open our cultural eye to worlds outside of our own.
Thank you, William.
Well, there may be some need to have some of the books reviewed if there's several parents that have a question, that there should be a process for that to go ahead. But I'm kind of philosophically opposed to book banning in general, and unless it can be shown to be clearly pornographic or totally antisocial, I think we need to be very careful about any banning any books. And going kind of along the line of the critical race theory, just because teachers and educators want to teach the negative aspects of American history as well as the positive aspects of American history, they should be able to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Laurel.
So yeah, I think that the state school board is the board that would help establish the bright lines for appropriate books that should be in our libraries. I think our public funding should be supporting appropriate books. I don't think generally we should be banning books, but I don't agree with having books with pornography in them in any of our libraries. I don't think our public funding should be supporting that. And so I really like the idea of the state school board holding a boundary or a bright line on that guideline, because I don't think that there's really any purpose for that in our schools. I do feel like those bright lines that would be guided from the state school board would then be able to be really flexible in what books are put in our libraries or in our curriculum with those bright lines.
30-second response. Well, that's just what I said. we don't want pornographic materials in there. And that's what I said, if it is, then of course we want to take it out. And I kind of agree with, after there was the controversy about this, I think the state school board came up with a reasonable policy in requiring that the local school districts include one parent that has a child in that school district to be put on the curriculum assessment and deciding committee, and that makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I add one last thing too? I apologize.
No, Sarah, 30 seconds.
Honestly, I'm tired of having this conversation. I don't think it's a debate we should be having, because historically we've talked about banning books decades and decades ago. And to me, it's an issue that has been created to divide us. And I think that's really sad, because I think we can all agree that our students have the freedom to learn. And I hope we can start focusing on issues that we see that are really important, and not focusing on these divisive issues like banning books and porn and books. That just is not true.
Can I have 30 seconds?
Yes.
I know for a fact that we have books in our libraries that contain pornography. And if you've ever had a student or a child that has been affected by that, it really affects their brain and mental capacity. I don't think it's appropriate for public dollars to be spent on those things. And it is a subject of divisiveness, but it's definitely kind of a moral guideline. And I think that we have a lot of parents who would like public funding to go towards more academic and more appropriate materials. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks to all of you, and thanks to the people who were submitting questions online. We have run out of time, so I'm going to start by asking our candidates to give their, I think we agreed upon 90-second closing statements. And this time we're going to start with William. William.
Well, I think as being a high school teacher for 11 years, English, American government, American history, and working closely with high school, and I did my junior high teaching internship with junior high, and I continue to tutor junior high and high school students through my own company, Peak Performance Tutoring. That, teachers are possibly the most, along with the parents, possibly the most important person in a student's life educationally. And we need to value and respect and support teachers and even administrators to do a proper job in education. As I said before, I also follow educational issues very closely on the local, state, and national level. And I think I'd be a great addition to the Utah State Board of Education.
Thank you, William. Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you for anyone that's tuned in today. I really appreciate it. And I think I've talked a lot about how I can build bridges, collaborate, and advocate for change. But for me, this is about representation. And my biggest goal is to represent the people of District 5 and their voice. And I think together we can tackle the real issues facing our schools and support our incredible educators and hardworking individuals in our public school system that we all love. Let's take the politics out of education. Let's focus on the students and building a community around them so they can thrive. My mom, who's an incredible educator, you can just ask her students, wish me luck on the debate today. And she said, remember, it's all about the success of every student. Love them all. And that, to me, is why I'm running, because I really believe in all of our students and I love them all, and they all deserve that love and that community. let's trust our educators. Let's create inclusive environments and safe classrooms where our students can be curious and be creative and thrive and learn. So join me. Let's get real. It's time for a brighter future for Utah students. I hope you'll vote Sarah Real on November 8th. No, I'm here for you. Please feel free to reach out with any questions or concerns you have, because the job is about representing you. That's the job. Thanks.
Thank you. Laurel.
So yes, thank you for having us today, and thank you for everyone who's listened and asked questions. I am a parent, bringing a parent's voice to the state school board. I really have the priorities to decrease the teacher workload, to make it so that they have more success in the classroom. I think that we need to focus on our academic basics, that the academics is our most unifying and overarching way of bringing students together of all different faiths and communities and backgrounds. I think we need high expectation for academics and really help kids to thrive there. And then I would also support the transparency for parents between schools and teachers, so that everyone knows all of what's happening in the curriculum that is being taught. I think that we have universal truths that govern success in our lives, that we have, hard work, honesty, integrity. All of those things need to be part of our academic focus. And I would appreciate your vote if you agree with me. And I would love it on November 8th for District 5. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for joining us today and for running for office. It's not an easy task. And so we at the Utah School Debate Coalition really just want to thank all of you for joining us, for running for office, and we will talk to you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.